hits our heart. You will not ever hear me say that I got my degrees from IUS because they don't give them away. Because if I tell you I got my degrees at IUS, you're like, okay, yeah, me too. But if I tell you I earned them, you give me the respect that I deserve for the hard work that I put in to get those degrees. That one word changes the whole meeting. So that is how I teach these inmates, and I challenge them all the time. I will have officers go, is everything okay in there? Because I am on them. I'm like, yeah, we're good, right? I'm just letting them know the truth, right? Kelly Brown, he's one of our greatest drug enforcers in the county. I'm walking through booking the other day, and a girl that had been through my program, she's sitting there in the remand room, and that's where you come in from the Sally Port, and you're sitting there, and they're checking you in, and we're going to take you into booking and strip search you, and I start losing my mind on this girl, right? She's like, what? And Officer Brown goes, is she serious? To my lieutenant, she went, yep, this is how she is, right? And he goes, well, it kind of explains it, because she heard your voice and was like, oh God, I hope that ain't Yvonne. What I can tell you is they know that I'm coming from a good spot. I'm coming from experience, right? And I know we don't end up in that remand room if we're living right. What I have learned in sobriety, most people don't go to jail. My family, that was real normal, right? And another reason why I'm real big about not giving them a time cut is because, like, when I got sober, my family didn't care. It was just, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Aren't you tired of that life? Aren't you tired of giving your kids away? Right? When I graduated with my 3 degrees, nobody in my family showed up. When I got baptized, nobody in my family showed up. Right? They don't know, because they've not ever experienced. They've never done that. They don't know the hard work it is to get there to do it, right? They don't know what they don't know. And that's called life. If you're doing it for someone else to show up and do it for you and give you all these accolades, you'll be real disappointed, because that's called life. Right? But what I can tell you is the men and women that I worked hard with in that church and that I stay sober with, they showed up. Girlfriend of mine asked me to get special permission from the daycare to bring my daughter. My daughter got to see me graduate. And today it's not, oh, if you go to college, it's where you go into college. I don't give her a choice, right? Education's key. And I know that, right? And so you never stop learning. So these are some of the things that I don't allow, but as you notice where it says all inmates applying will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, because I also believe some of these individuals, no one ever will give them hope. And I'll work with some of them. Right? And some people will say, well, how do you work with this one? And you know that they've done this, or this. And you know what? That's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's son. That's somebody's grandkid. They're human. Life is turned on them. Now, on the other side of that, I can also tell you, and I will tell anybody, and Sheriff just cringes when I say this, because I'm like, some people need to just rot and die in prison. You know what I mean? Like, there are evil people, and he'll be like, Yvonne, because he is a super Christian. I'm like, I'm just being honest. He's like, I know. You know, he knows how I am. And I can also tell you that same man that is my boss has arrested me 3 times. And he will tell you how awful I was to put in the back of his car. Because when I was under the influence, I was an ornery, nasty person. Because what it was is that little girl inside of me was full of fear. And she was scared. She didn't like men of authority. If you remember, I told you what my daddy did. My daddy was also a police officer. Isn't it crazy? I got a badge on today. My God's got a sense of humor. That's right. Okay, got you, God. Right? But what I also know is I didn't pick this disease, and my daddy didn't pick his disease. Mental illness is real, you all. My dad was a paranoid schizophrenic. He served 3 tours in Vietnam and 1 tour in Korea. Not saying that that's right, and it doesn't justify, but he had illnesses too. And if nobody was helping me in the 80s, in the 90s, do you think anybody was helping him in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s? Absolutely not. Right? So sometimes we don't, some of us, we don't get to pick these illnesses. And sometimes we've brought them on ourselves because we chose to continue to drink and drug, and we've rewired our brains. Some of us don't come back. That's just facts, right? So they've allowed me to have that at my own discretion. So like I said, there are some times that I do have some in my program that most people won't, right? And I'll kick them out too. So these are some of the things that we do, right? So it's, we do behavior and cognitive. Like I said, I'm not trying to fix anybody or anything, right? And this does not cure anybody. facts, right? I just give them the opportunity to do something that we do differently. So when you go to therapy and you're in therapy, they talk about all the trauma, right? Everything that you ever been through. So from what I have learned over the years of going through therapy, that also gives me a free card to play victim. I've played victim my whole life, right? I don't want to be a victim. I want to be healed and cured and work past that. And what people don't understand is all the things that you can be diagnosed with can be worked through and or never come back to, right? When I first got sober, I had severe PTSD, right? The VA gave me a slew of things that was wrong with me, and I thought they were absolutely crazy, right? But what I do know is they were right. Right. And I went through therapy and I got outside help from my 12-step program in my church. And I learned how to not be a victim anymore. Right. And that was very empowering for me. So you will also, if you get to know me, you also know that I'm the same person that will say, I get to. I don't have to do anything. I get to go to work. I get to wash my own clothes. Right. I get to pay bills. Because what I do know is somebody out there is praying for the life that you have today. Stay grateful for what you got, right? Because I can tell you that when I've sat in a county inn, the only thing I wanted was to be able to touch a light switch to control the lights. I don't want to ever forget where I come from. You can take my freedom, but those things like that, when you can't even control your own light switch, it's hard, right? The life I have today, I prayed for. And it's better than I ever believed I could ever achieve. And so because that I am that way, I have chose a different approach. I do positive psychology with these individuals, right? Instead of the negative. They can deal with that when they go to Life Springs or whatever the courts want them to do, or when they go to prison. I always push on the positive, right? Everybody's telling you what to do and how to do it, but do they stop and say, how are you? What's going on with you, instead of checking the boxes, right? So I push them on the positive, right? And because we know how to survive, we don't know how to thrive, right? When you are in the middle of addiction, you don't know how to do that kind of stuff, right? And 92.8% of our inmates are in addiction, right? So I get the opportunity. Darla is our LCSW. It is one of there's only 5 jails in the state of Indiana that has a full-time licensed LCSW. And because of that, we also get a lot of fed inmates that need weekly assessments that we get to do. So I am CSAM certified, and that is through the federal government. It's equivalent to an LCSW, but it's under controlled substance, right? So her and I attack them in 2 different ways. She'll hit them with trauma, and I'll hit them with reality. Right? We're like a heck of a duo. So she works with them on that stuff because, like she says, I don't have experience in that. You do, Yvonne, right? So we do push this, and this is what we do. I can tell you by the time I'm in the 2nd chapter of this book, half of the class drops out because they're not a victim. Can't play victim in my class. You made a choice. I don't care if you're here because you took somebody else's charges. The lifestyle you're living got you to make that choice. Or, oh, that wasn't mine. Okay, that's probably true. But how many times have you gotten away with it? You haven't been caught. Big deal. You're going to sit on 6 months. Who cares? And I can promise you the things that I've done out there in the madness, and the people that I've robbed, and the things that I've done in my lifetime, and the things that I've caused people harm, I shouldn't be standing here. Being dead would be easy. I should be in prison, right? Because there was a lot of things I didn't get caught doing, right? And it's just, that's reality of us when we're in the middle of addiction, right? And so that's one thing I tell them, right? So I push that on them all the time. I'm constantly pushing them to retrain their brain. And I will do the positive just as much as they say, I had a guy in class the other day. He's like, this guy came back from court. He's wailing out, and I had to go talk to him, and I stopped the class right in the middle of it. Stop. You're lying to yourself. He's like, what do you mean? You didn't have to go talk to that other inmate. How does it sound when other people in that block hear you say, I'm willing to go talk to him to help him? Guess what? That's an attraction. You're showing them change. Instead of you had to, that's feeding your ego. And ego is ego, and that's edging God out. You ain't God. You didn't have to do nothing. You made a choice. Own it. And then we'll go on with class. But I will interrupt them from the jump. Like, wait a minute, nope, that's a lie, right? They don't know how to tell the truth, right? We don't know. And I have learned that. And where I'm at in my life today, I tripped one of my old professors at US yesterday at the mental health summit. I said, I'm trying to learn how not to lie. She was like, what? I said, in here, nobody knows how mean Yvonne is to Yvonne except Yvonne. I have believed these lies for so long. Whether I'm looking in the mirror or before I'm getting here, I have texted probably 100 people today. I'm scared to death to come up here and talk. Because what it does is it reminds me how far I've come. And I try to just stay in today, right? I'm just doing what God tells me to do today because I asked him every morning, how can I serve you, right? And God says, you're going to be here today. And I'm scared to death. But what I do know is this is a small price to pay, if it's going to keep me sober today. Ain't nothing, right? And I get the opportunity to show you all we do recover. Does it happen often? Absolutely not. And I'll sit in that block with a room full of inmates like this, and I'll be like, you know what? Only one of us is going to stay sober, and I hope it's me. Because what I can tell you is I'm real selfish about my sobriety. But what I also know is that was said to me, and I thought, I'm going to show Rhonda Donahue I'm going to stay sober, right? It worked for me, right? And I can tell you the same woman that hired me at the courthouse is the same woman that pulled me out of a trap house because I had disappeared from my family and my children for 5 years. And she was tired of seeing my mom cry, not knowing where I was at, if I was going to end up dead. I can also tell you that I have my full name tattooed on me because my mom begged me. So if they found my body, they'd know who I was. It's the only tattoo I didn't get covered up. It reminds me. That's the truth of it, you know? And it's kind of, y'all, it's funny. I'm getting sober and I get the opportunity to live in the projects. I was living in White Court. My dope man comes through and I got a tank top on. My name's plastered on the back, right? And I'm walking. He keeps talking to me and I'm like, nope, not gonna talk to him, not gonna talk to him. He's like, Yvonne, your name is tattooed on you. I know it's you. I was like, oh, can't hide from him, right? Like, I'm like, right? But what I can tell you is I was spiritually fit enough at that moment to say, today I'm not doing drugs. Today I'm staying sober, right? And that changes every day depending on how spiritually fit I am. And that is how it is with the parents that you all work with, right? We want to be sober and we need to be sober, but it's only those that do the work that stay sober because it is a program of action, right? So remember that. And they'll say, well, I want to be sober. Well, yeah, you want one hand and you know the other, right? But what I also can tell them is what you did to get what you wanted to get, put that same focus on getting sober. I was willing to go to any length. I'd knock on somebody's door. I'd go to Portland. I would go anywhere. I'd walk into the worst bar known to man. I didn't care because there was something in there I wanted. If there's something, whether it's in church or a 12-step program that you really want, you'll go to any length to get it, right? So here we are for our highlights. So in 2024, I had 101 males apply, 78 females apply. Many of them were denied, right? If you notice, very few complete. However, my biggest thing with this is this my job. Nobody knows what I'm doing. And I'm okay with that, right? But I can tell you by December of last year, I was starting to get worn down, right? Because they just kept coming back or I was viewing them in a coffin, right? And I'll tell them, I'd rather see you in jail than view you. And they're like, what? I'm like, well, that's the choices we got. I'm going to see you or I'm going to view you. Which one's it going to be? And like, guess what? 90% of you all, I'm not going to be able to view you in a coffin because they're going to have to start a GoFundMe page and we're going to have to cremate you because you ain't got life insurance. That's just facts, right? So I started getting real discouraged by the end of December and I work under a DOC grant. And so I put my numbers together and this was my highlight of the whole year. Over half the jail had applied for my program. And I don't advertise it because I believe attraction rather than promotion. If I promote it, everybody's gonna wanna come in there. But if that inmate that comes back from my class, you start seeing walk over there and help that guy that he didn't have to help, but he wanted to, and he's the same guy that's been in segregation because he beats the shit out of everybody, but you see something different, the next person's gonna come to that kiosk, nobody knows it, and he's gonna sign up to get interviewed, male and female, right? So I believe that attraction rather than promotion, and I will not advertise it at all, right? Because if they see it, they'll believe it. And they live with these other guys and girls that are in my classes, right? They see better inmate than what I see, because we can suit up, show up and dress up and act good for a few hours, get out of that block. But when I go back and watch recordings and things are changing, that's an attraction, right? I've planted a seed. So I'm real proud of these numbers, real proud. And what I can tell you is I also tell them, I hope that when you get out and you decide to use, you can't get high. I hope you get the nastiest dope there is. I hope you get cotton fever. It's where you get an infection in your veins from the cotton, right? Because you keep reusing it. Been there, done that. And they're like, what do you mean? Because you're going to hear that when that needle's going in your arm. You're going to hear me and I'm going to ruin that buzz because I planted that seed, right? And when I know they're real promiscuous, especially with men, I'm real blunt and honest. I'm like, I hope your dick can't get hard. Hope y'all have fun with that, right? I'm nasty and I'm ornery and I'm honest because that's going to hit their head. Because 90% of these want to go out here and plant kids everywhere and have no responsibility. And then when they come to jail, all of a sudden, well, I went to my DCA's class. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I've got all these kids. No, you don't. You ain't got nothing. You're in here and you ain't even pay child support. Don't give me that because I pay child support. I got one left and I can't wait till she turns 18. I count down, but I pay it every week, right? I know what that's like. Done all that, do all that, right? So I'm real proud of that. Oh, I'm shaking. I'm so nervous, y'all.
You got it. You're doing great.
She says that.
So
Here we go. All right, here we go. So again, I don't fix, and I don't stop recidivism. They will be faced with owning their own choices and situations. They will learn, and I tell them this from day one. Most challenging thing you will learn with me is you are the problem and you are the solution. No one can fix you but you. You can't go to therapy. You can't go to a 12-step program. You can't go to a halfway house. You can't go anywhere and they're going to fix you. You got to do the work, right? Because if it was that simple, we wouldn't have alcoholics and addicts in this world, right? Because y'all fix us, right? So that's one of the things they can't stand. Acceptance is their key. We challenge that stinking thinking. And notice how I put that in there, my little kick. We empower them to do the work to begin the change while incarcerated. That's the name of the program. Huh, right? Very cool, right? So, you know, it is an honor and a privilege to get to do this with these inmates. And it's hard. And what I do know is if you ever have any of your parents and they've been through my program, you can just say, yep, I know how she is. And when they try to tell you that I did this, this, or this, you're gonna be like, we know how she is. She's brutally honest, right? Like I said, I will get in their face. When I teach at the academy, I'm telling you all, I can do things you all can't do because I've been where they've been, right? I can also tell you that when I was out in the midst of the madness, like, you know, we all have a past, right? Some of these older inmates come in. One guy come to my class and he's like, ooh, I know you, Yvonne. I'm like, uh-oh, with my clothes on or off? You know, like, what is it? Jesus, which one is it? You know what I mean? Like, it's just true. And, you know, they're all looking at me like, what? And I'm like, hey, you know, I'm not proud of that, but that's where I was. And God allowed me to walk through that so I can face these people and show them shame and guilt don't have to be your antidote anymore. It's killing you, right? Let's talk about those things, right? You're not alone. I care, right? Because what I can tell you is when you're out there in the midst of it, you want to die. And as soon as you grab a sober breath, you want to live. And then all of a sudden, y'all have seen these parents, they give a sober breath. And all of a sudden, they're parents of the year. They love their kids. No, you don't. You're sitting in jail. You're lying. Oh, I've had one guy, he come up after me and I was like, okay, what are you gonna do, hit me? And then I'm gonna put you down so quick. Not only have I got street training, I've been through the academy. Let's have fun. You know what I mean? I don't care. Now, let me be real honest with you. My butthole was puckered and I was like, if he hits me, I'm going down and my false teeth are like, you know what I mean? But I can't let them know that, right? You know? I mean, it's just how it is. Darla said the other day, this girl, she's back in and I'm like, when are you gonna get teeth? And Darla, that's the LCSW I work with, she just kind of looked at me. I just took mine out and set them on my desk and I said, see, I got mine. You got to get them. It's going to help you. You know what I mean? Like it will help you, right? But nobody faces them with those different difficult topics, right? But when you've been able to walk through it, right? Because just think, if somebody tried to come up to you and try to tell you how to be a CASA worker that's never been a CASA worker, what's the chances that you're really going to pay any attention to what they have to say? And what I can tell you is every time I was ever in a county inn and somebody came in to teach class or bring church in, and they'll be like, oh, I know what you've been through. And I'm like, girl, you ain't never had to do what I've done for something real cheap. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've done some real crazy stuff, you know, and you know it. We spot what we got. I can spot one of me anywhere I go. We're like magnets, alcoholics and addicts. We get just close enough, and then we bounce off each other. But we get close enough to get what we want, and then we're gone. We are the most selfish and self-centered individuals you'll ever meet on this planet. We can't see past our nose till we're taught that. Right? I was sober 10 months, and my sponsor in my 12-step program, she said, well, you've been sober long enough. It's time for you to go out and do something for somebody without telling anybody. And I was like, I do that all the time. She was like, without expecting anything. And I was like, okay, whatever. She tells me to pray about it. And this time I hadn't found God, right? But I'm doing anything and everything I have to do in order to stay sober. So I pray to God for this to happen. After I was 10 years sober, she told me I had the right to share the story. So I get the opportunity to do that. So I pray about it. Now at this time, I've already got my GED, because when I got sober, I didn't know how to read. So I've learned how to read. I got my GED. I'm going to school at IU Southeast. And I got my GED because that was pretty easy. I was really surprised. I got out of school in 8th grade, and I was like, they just gave that to me. I think God had to do that because I don't know how I passed it, right? So I always say I got that one. And so I prayed about it, right? And I'm going down 265, and I've gotten, y'all know about that financial aid money that we get, right? And that tax money, we always think we're real rich as poor people that are on welfare. Y'all know. And then we get these boyfriends that put Jordans on their feet because they love us until the tax money runs out. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so those are our maybe babies, or maybe baby daddies. That's what we always call them, right? Because they just be around, we got a tax check or our fast food. So I'm sober. I'm not doing that kind of stuff, right? But I'm living in housing, and I got my FAFSA, and I've got my state check, my tax check, and my insurance, my income tax check. And I prayed, right? Because the sponsor told me to do that. Well, I'm going down 265. Now I'm a gearhead. I love old cars. I used to work on them all the time. My daddy was back shade mechanic is what he used to call himself. And I was always in the garage with him, working with him, right? So I'm a muscle person, right? I love old cars. Pass this old truck, and I'm like, man, that lifter is ticking, right? Now, when you don't know what it is, it's like, and then next thing I know, I'm going, and I hear is boom. And I look back, and there's smoke everywhere. So it wasn't a lifter ticking, it was a rod that just went through the block, right? So she pulls over, and I'm like, and my God says, Yvonne, turn around. I want to. Turn around. I want to. And I'm just driving, right? And I got my youngest in the back of my car, back of my little minivan, and I turned around, and I pull up in front of her, and she's scared to death, and she's on the phone, and she's in front of the truck on 265, shaking. And there's a little girl in the front seat of the truck, and she's crying, and I get out and I talk to her, and she's on the phone with a man, and he's screaming and hollering at her, cussing her out, telling her it's her fault. Now, you know, if a car's going down, it's going down. Ain't nobody just picked it up and it starts doing that, right? What I can tell you is I've been in that situation before, right? My first husband was very, very violent. He put me in a coma 3 times, right? He was very abusive, and I stayed, right? Because I was going to fix him, right? 2 to make it, 2 to break it. Can't say it was all his fault. I played a part in that too. And I know that today, right? So I know what that fear's like, and I know what that phone call's like, right? And so she gets off the phone, and I'm like, can I take you, home? And she was like, yes. And she had just left her abusive husband. She was staying with her brother and Jeff, and he was letting her borrow the truck. She went to Aldi's. Back of the truck was full of groceries. We put them in my minivan, take her over. She's in housing in Jeffersonville. And she said, my brother said you can't come to the door. So I know why that is. I know that one. I know, not a problem. I ain't got no problem with that. I get that, right? You don't let people come in your house when you're doing stuff we do. And God said, Yvonne, put money in her purse. I ain't doing that. I kept taking groceries because I could only put them at the steps, right? God said, do it. And now, this is how my God works. She goes in that house, leaves her purse in the back of my van. Does she not know I'm a thief? Like, she don't know nothing about me, right? I'll take your identity, your money, and everything, right? I'll have a good time. And I took every bit of the money I had in my pocket, and I put it in her wallet, and I hid it. What I can tell you is the next day, I went to school, and I was working on campus at the time, and that truck was gone. And one of the things she did, crying all the way to that house, that apartment in Jeff, I don't have the money to get the tow, and my brother's giving me hell. He's probably going to kick me out. That truck was gone the next day. I've never seen her since. It's the first time I had to be taught that. Y'all do that normally. Y'all are volunteers. Y'all do this like naturally. It's in your heart. It's weird to me. Like, what do you mean? Like, y'all just do this. Like, oh my God. I had to be taught how to do something nice for somebody without ever getting anything in return. And then I get to stand in front of people that do that every day. I had to be taught what's in your heart. You all are so blessed. You all are gifts from God. I had to be taught what you all do so freely. You all are angels and you all are amazing. And that started my life to learn how to do stuff without getting anything in return, right? Because I get to come here, right? I get to pay bills today, right? I get to be in front of people that talk and stand up for the kids to show you all that some of us moms are not meant to be full-time moms, right? And that's okay. My daughter, she's home with me this weekend, and she said, Mom, I'm really praying and thinking about coming to live with you. I was like, you are? She's like, yeah. Fear sets in. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to be any good at this. It's not going to be any good. I get real comfortable with things just staying the way they are. Right? But yet I tell you, if I would have told you yesterday, that's something I prayed for. I face it today and I'm full of fear. Find myself in the bathroom, the shower on, I've hit my knees, I'm bawling. I called my sponsor and she goes, she ain't done nothing. It's just a thought. I done crucified myself. I was already fell on, like it was over. Like, you know what I mean? Like just over. Oh my God, nothing's even happened. But that's how my brain works. It's that stinking thinking, right? So I no longer have a drug and alcohol problem. I've got a thinking problem. And that's why I have a sponsor who has walked before me, that's done this life as being a mom, sober, and knows how to face those things, right? Some of us and the parents that you will work with will never not be able to have somebody to help them walk through life, right? So just know that, right? But just know that you all are doing something that God's called you to do, and you're doing it so freely. And I can promise you that my children needed you all to be their voice. Because when I was drinking and drugging, I was a nasty, awful, ornery, mean mom. Right? I can also tell you, going down Dixie Highway, I was at a party and I told my son in a very nasty, ornery, horrific way that he was going to get his da-da-da-da-da-da in the car and we were leaving. He begged me not to get in the car because I was so intoxicated. He also knew how to get a hold of that phone and he called 911. And he probably saved somebody else's life and his when I got locked up. Because see, what happens is we don't die. We live, we kill other people. Right? We wouldn't get lucky enough to die. Right? And so I know for me that if I were to relapse today, I would not go out there and die. That'd be easy. And I can promise you, if I knew I was going to die and I could tear it on a good one for a couple of days and go do what I did, because some of it was fun or I wouldn't have kept doing it. I would not be sober today, but see, people like me live. And then I'm walking dead. And I'm facing all of those demons all over again. Right? And so you will hear me but you may run into parents that I will say, like, one of you all got to die for the other one to live. Or when some of them die, I'm like, man, you're lucky. It's over. I fight it every day. Right? So we have nurses on staff. I sponsor women. And this girl, she came in to do med pass during my class, and I'm walking back down, and my office is down in booking, and she's like, Yvonne, come here. And so I did, and she goes, you sponsor a girl named Alyssa? I went, yes. She goes, so you're the one that told her when her husband was coming out on a gurney that, glad he's dead, it's over. Yep, sure was. Thought his mom was gonna come unglued. But what I knew is those two were real toxic, and those kids were gonna die. Because they did what you all were talking about earlier. They left stuff laying around all the time. And I'm like, something tragic's gonna happen. And it ain't gonna happen to one of the adults. It's gonna happen to one of the kids. Right? We have a woman in our jail right now that's facing charges because her children died because of this disease of what she left in the home. Right? And I get to put my biases aside and treat her like a human being. Because what I can tell you is, for the grace of God, there go I. And I know that today. That woman that killed those two families here on 265, 3 days, she didn't remember anything. Still don't remember it. Thank God she doesn't. Right? But what I can tell you is every officer is talking about how horrible she is and what society, that's just terrible. I'm like, you all, that's me in there. For the grace of God, there go I. That's me. Right? You know how many times I drove under the influence? Almost every time. And what I can tell you is I was a blackout drinker. There's times I'll go down the highway and I'll look around and I'll be like, wonder if they're in a blackout. Because I'd wake up and I wouldn't open my eyes and I'd try to figure out where I'm at. I can tell you, my oldest kids could tell you what I was on by the way my car was either parked in the driveway, in the yard, or not at all. On Locust Street, on New Albany, a guy got so tired of me pulling my car in his backyard, he put a stop sign in it. And I used to think that was the funniest thing ever. You know what I mean? Like, put a stop sign up. But I would forget that that wasn't my house. And I'd just pull up in his backyard, tear up his fence and everything. Like, it was no big deal. That's just one of the things I did. There's so many, right? And it's all those things. I had an inmate tell me, Yvonne, this is what he learned in prison. We start this life of drinking and drugging, right? It's like driving a semi truck, right? And when you drive a semi truck, you got a 53-foot trailer behind you, right? And it can weigh up to 80,000 pounds, right? That's the max. He said, so you're going along in life and you're doing your drinking and drugging and you're participating in this life, and all the trauma you get, you just keep throwing it in the back of this semi truck, right? He goes, and then all of a sudden the law stops you, or you decide to stop, right? Sometimes the law picks us up and puts us and stops us. He said, and you're in the cab of that semi and the brakes get slammed on and all that trauma comes in the cab of the truck with me. And I'm sitting there with all of it. What do I do with it? And that resonated with me. Because what I can tell you is the longer I'm sober, the more trauma I'm identifying in my childhood. Because what it's taught me in my 12-step program, more will be revealed. And thank God all of it wasn't revealed at once, because I wouldn't be sober today. God puts it in my place when it's time for me to work through it and deal with it. And then I'm like, really, that too? Oh, let's go work on this again, right? You know what I mean? I'm never fixed. And I can't fix the inmates, right? It's an ongoing process. If I was going to be willing to die high, and today I've changed it, I'm willing to die and want to die sober. And I can tell you, I've hurt people, I've lied, I've cheated, I've stole, I've done stupid stuff in recovery, right? But it also tells me I'm not a saint, right? But I also know that if I go to bed with the same sobriety date that I woke up with, the day's a win-win. Because there were days where I couldn't even put 24 hours together, right? So I'm not perfect. I don't do it right, right? But what I can tell you is I feel things from beginning to end, right? I used to not do that. Stuff started feeling weird. I'd put substance in me, or I'd go sleep with somebody, or I'd go steal, right? That's what I did to get out of self, to get away from those feelings. I don't do that today. Today I get to feel things from beginning to end. right? When I got to watch my mom die, right? I got to feel that from beginning to end. I got to watch one of my sisters take her life by gunshot. I got to watch that from beginning to end, feel that from beginning to end. God chose me to help put her body in that body bag and clean that room up, right? And what I can tell you is I sat at that funeral home watching my siblings suffer and not understanding that that was their sister in that box. But I was the lucky one. I was so lucky. I was the last one to see her. That's a gift. I'm not a victim, right? I told my husband, I said, I'm the luckiest one here. And he was like, what? I'm like, they don't know if that's her in the box. They want to believe it. But when somebody gets cremated and you didn't get to see the body, it's not closure. I know that's her in that box. God chose me. That's a gift, right? I'm not a victim to that. That's a gift, right? It's how are you going to look at things? I'm not a victim, right? What am I getting to learn from this? And so I get to take all of these beautiful experiences that are so hard to walk through and share with these inmates, right? So they don't get to come in and act like they're a victim to anything. Okay, yeah, okay, big deal. Your mom left you, you got adopted. So what? My dad impregnated me. You want to top stories? Let's go for it, buddy. You know what I mean? Like, and, right? We all got stories. We all got wounds. Some are deeper than others, right? And what I've learned working with inmates is their wounds may be mild to me, but they're real to them, right? Same with mine, right? And what I do know is my life ain't nothing. I meet people every day that have worse lives than I've ever had. I've also watched a family right now, grandma, grandpa, 2 kids, 5 children, 2 grandchildren in that jail right now. It's a family disease. They normalize jail and they hate when I tell them that. You want your kids to come to jail? No, but guess what? You're normalizing it for them. I know so many people out there in the public that nobody in their family's ever been to jail. Nobody. You're normalizing it for your kids. Kids are watching us all the time. So I have those uncomfortable conversations and I face them with those kind of things, right? What I can tell you is my youngest child, she got to see me go to college. That becomes the norm, right? Those are the things we get to teach these people, or I do, right? That's why I love my job, right? And I don't know how long God's going to have me there, right? I don't. But what I can tell you is every day I am happy to be there. And it's crazy because like I'd put something on Facebook about I'd get to or something like that. And one of the sergeants, which I thought never liked me because, you know, I believe these lies in my head, right? She's like, you are the only person I know that walks in that jail happy every day. And I was like, dude, right? How incredible, right? Because what I also know is people remember you by how you make them feel, not by what you got, not by what you don't have, right? But how did you make them feel when you were in their life? That's what I'm doing, is planting those seeds, challenging them to face things they've never faced before, right? You know, I'm real fortunate with where I'm at. And I know I'm very, very harsh when people meet me, right? But what I do know is I am who I am because God wants me to be where I'm supposed to be. And some days I have a hard time with that because I want to be what I think you all look like and how you all are. Like I look at you all like you're perfect, like you help people, you do this and do that. Your whole life's put together and I'm over here believing these lies in my head that I ain't good enough. I was petrified to get here. Petrified because somebody like me doesn't deserve to be up here. But if I believe in God and I believe I'm supposed to be here, then I come up and I suit up and show up and be scared. And I peed and prayed before I came in here. Like that lady that walked in on me upstairs thought I was nuts. But you know what I mean? I'm like, this is what I got to do. You know what I mean? And that's okay, right? And that's okay, because this is a small price to pay to be sober for 24 hours, right? I get to do these things today to be real uncomfortable and share this wonderful program that I absolutely love, that I'm crazy about, right? And nobody is ever thanking you all for what you do. And so I want to share with you all, I told y'all I reached out to a bunch of my girlfriends this morning, right? And they're in recovery. And one of my girlfriends, she's one of my very, very best friends. She's the girl I can't go anywhere with because we laugh at really inappropriate situations. At places like my sponsor's always like, I'm gonna separate you two. She's a teacher, so she does that, right? And Joanne said, Yvonne, she was like, Casa saved my grandson's life and helped me get custody of him when he was 4 days old. And she still reaches out and checks on me. Her son is 10 years old. That's the kind of impression you all put on people's lives and families, right? So you don't hear it, you don't see it, but you all are everywhere, and the things you all do are making huge impacts. So coming from a twisted, crazy parent that's in recovery, that gets to work with some of your parents, I thank you all. That's all I got.
Follow that one,
I
Julie.
don't need to go to church now. I'm saying it tonight, but I think I got it.
I think I'll get our feet. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, before we wrap up, if you all will look in your folders, I have a few things. The angels that you are. If there's somebody in your life, in your spirit, and